In this tutorial, I'm going to be showing you guys how I made this off-shoulder puff sleeve gathered dress. The dress has a fitted bodice and has like a full skirt on the bottom. I opted for something that was like above my knee because I'm not a tall girl, so I'd rather have a short dress than a long dress. But you can make the dress midi or maxi length if you wanted to. And in this video, I'm going to be showing you how to make the whole piece. So from making the patterns to cutting the dress and then putting everything together in this video. So you have to watch no other tutorials but this one. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up if you enjoy it. Leave your thoughts in the comment section down below and let's jump into this. You need the following measurements to create the patterns for this dress. In this tutorial, I show how to make the patterns in the beginning of this video, then I show how to cut and sew the dress. If you don't know how to take your measurements, I have a tutorial where I show how to take your own measurements using a measuring tape, so make sure to check that out. So I'm going to be starting off with making the patterns for the top of the dress. I have some pattern paper here, and the first thing I'm doing is just drawing out a short horizontal line that is going to become my shoulder line. So once you have that line in place, from that point mark downwards vertical distance from your shoulder to your bust. I highly recommend working with your own measurement or that of your client for the best outcome. Next up, I'm squaring across that point like so, because that is going to be a crucial line later on. After that, I'm making the distance from my shoulder to my waistline, and mine is roughly 15 inches. And I'm going in to square across that line because that is going to become the waistline for the top half of this dress. So next up here, I'm marking 6 inches down from the shoulder line because the neckline of this dress is off shoulder, and I'm squaring across like so, and then along this line we're going to be marking our cross chest measurement. So these are just different dimensions for the lines that we've marked so far. So I'm going in here to mark half of my across chest measurement along this line like so, and then I'm going to mark a quarter of my bust line along the bust line that we squared across earlier on, and then along my waist I'm marking a quarter of my waist measurement plus 1 inch for my waist dart. So once I have these points marked, I know I can go back in and connect them together to create a side seam. So I'm connecting my waist to my bust, and using the inner curved side of my pattern master, I'm drawing in the front arm curve. The front arm curve is always slightly deeper compared to the back arm curve. So once you have that in place, I'm just going in here to find the middle point of my waistline and mark away my dart, so I know that would help me divide this pattern into panels. So I'm just going in here to draw a dart that is roughly 4 inches tall, and then connect the side to the top point of my dart. And once I have that drawn in place, I'm going to be extending that middle point or that middle line of my dart to divide my front panel into two. For a more snug fit around the neckline, I am taking off 1/2 inch from each side of that dividing line, and this is going to prevent excess gaping happening along the neckline of the dress. So I'm just curving that back into the point of the waist dart, and I'm going to repeat it for the next side. So 1/2 inch marked up from the top, and then connect it back to the point of the waist dart. So once you've done this, you can get rid of the excess that sits in the dart, and you have panel 1 and panel 2. So I'm going to get fresh pattern paper and trace off my 2 panels for my front. The panel 1, which would be cut on a fold and would become that mid front piece. Once I've traced off the panels, I'm going to go ahead and add a seam allowance of 1 centimeter around. You can work with 1/2 inch or 1 inch, whatever you're comfortable with. Add my grain line as well as notch points and annotations helping me know what piece is what. So this is what the pattern pieces look like cut out. This is my first front pattern, and then the second one, which when joined together would create my full front for the top of the dress. So once you have your front pieces done, we can go ahead and work on the back. And for the back, I'm tracing off the front plan, which will give me a good basis to make any changes for the back. And then once I have the side, the top, the bottom, I'm going to be making a change to the arm curve. So the back arm curve is slightly shallower compared to the front, and with the help of my pattern master, I'm just going in here to make the change for that arm curve there. The next thing I'm going to be doing is shaping in my center back line, because I wanted to have a really nice tailored fit along the back of the dress, which is where my zip would be sitting. I'm folding in or drawing in that waistline in by about 1/2 inch or 1 centimeter, and then just straight it out to the top of the neckline. So this is what the back plan looks like. I'm going to go ahead and transfer the dividing lines that would create panel 3 and panel 4 for my back top, cross out whatever I don't need before going in with extra pattern paper to trace off the 2 panels that are going to become my back. So like I said earlier on, the zip is going to sit along the center back, and then we have the other panel on the side that would connect to the front to make a full top pattern piece. To differentiate the back side from the front side, remember to add 2 notches on that back panel so you know when you're cutting your back pieces. So I'm going to go ahead and work on my sleeve pattern, and for this I'm going to get a very wide pattern paper and trace off the arm curve for the front and the back. So starting off with the front, I'm just going ahead to trace off the front arm curve, indicating the top and the bottom of that arm curve as well. And then the sleeve itself is about 25 inches wide, because the wider you make the sleeve, the fuller the puff will be. So once you have that marked across like so, I'm going to be turning the pattern paper on its opposite side to trace off the back arm curve. When you do this like so, you are able to get both arm curves for your sleeve, and all you need is to add the top, the bottom, and the side seams to create your sleeve pattern. So now that we have the arm curves traced off, I'm going to go ahead and connect the front to the back arm curve, which is a separation of about 25 inches. And once you've connected them like so, I'm extending the top by 1.5 inches, which would help me create the elastic tunnel for that top of the sleeve. So I'm connecting the sides like so. I'm going to do this for the front and for the back. And then the sleeve length is roughly 5.5 inches from that underarm point. So I'm marking it this way, so I'm sure that the front and the back side seams are actually the same length, and I won't have any funny surprises when I cut the pattern onto fabric. So I'm connecting the bottom hem and creating the side seams for my sleeve like so. Then I'm going in to add my 1 centimeter seam allowance all the way around, except that top edge, which we've already extended by 1.5 inches. And once you've added your seam allowances, you can go ahead and add your grain lines, your annotations, and cut out the pattern piece so you have your sleeve pattern ready to work with. So these are all of the patterns that I made for the dress. I made the top front, top back, the sleeve, and for the skirt, I just went ahead to cut it straight onto fabric. The fabric I'm working with is this green print Ankara cotton material. I'll say you need roughly 2 meters for this dress style. And I also got black cotton lining because I want the dress to be fully lined, as it's something that I think I'll most likely wear straight away, even though it's fairly cold. So I'm just going in here to cut out my different pieces, my front, my back, my sleeve, as well as the dress skirt. I did this for the main material and for the lining panel, so I have all the pieces ready to be joined together. So I have my sleeve pieces. I ended up cutting 2, 1 for each side. I have my main top, front and back, and then I also have my skirt, which is 18 inches long and is twice of my waistline measurement. So I know when I gather that back into the waistline of the top, I have some fullness there. I also went ahead to cut my top and back lining pieces, marking the front and the back, as well as cutting the skirt, which is the same width but is shorter by about 2 inches, so I know that the lining is shorter than the actual skirt on the inside. So now it's time to sew. The first I'm going to be joining is all of the top panels. I have pinned together, putting right sides facing each other. I'm going to be sewing up my front panels together. Then I'm going to be sewing up my back panels, doing that for the left and for the right hand side, leaving the center back open. And once I stitch these up in place, I know I can join them up at the side. So now I'm just sewing on my 1 centimeter seam allowance. I'm going to repeat this for all of the panels, give them a nice press, ironing all of my seams open so the finish is nice and smooth on the outside. And now I'm just putting right sides together, and I'm going to be sewing the side seams of the front panels to the back panels. Remember to do this for the other side as well, so you have one full piece for the top of the dress. And then I went ahead to press my seams open so I know it's ready to be attached to the lining, the sleeve and the skirt to create the full dress. So I'm going to be going ahead to work on my sleeves. The first thing I'm doing is to overlock the edges before I create my tunnels. I'm going to be taking this to my overlocker to do that as well. But if you don't have an overlocker, I say you can use a zigzag stitch on your domestic machine or bias tape. After that, I went ahead to fold the top and the bottom edges by 2 centimeters to create a tunnel that I'll be passing my elastic straps through. So after stitching this for the left and for the right sleeve, I'm going to be cutting my elastic straps, and you would need one measuring roughly 11 inches, which is going to sit on the top tunnel, and then another one measuring 14 inches, which is going to go into the bottom tunnel. So after cutting these out, I'm going to grab a safety pin, and with that safety pin, pass the elastic strips or elastic bands through the tunnel from one end to the other. Just remember to use a pin to pin down the end of that elastic so you don't lose it in that tunnel. So once you're done passing the elastics for the top and the bottom tunnels, you know you can actually stitch up the side seams of that sleeve and have it fixed into the arm curve of the dress. So this is what the sleeve is looking like once I've passed all my elastic through. I'm going to be folding it, putting right sides together, and then I'm going to be sewing up the side seam. And because I've already overlocked that edge like so, I don't have to think about overlocking after sewing. So after sewing up the side seams, I went ahead to do a short stitch just to secure the ends or the opening of the tunnels and to secure the elastic inside as well for that top sleeve tunnel. So you need to do this for your left and for your right sleeve. Just remember to also go back and join your top panels for your lining, because you'll be needing them all sewn together to sew your sleeve into the top of the garment. So now I have all of my lining pieces stitched up and pressed. We're going to be putting the right side of the lining to the right side of your main top. Once you're unsure everything matches and you're happy with it, you know you can go ahead and grab your 2 sleeves that have been all sewn together and ready to be fixed. And I'm going to be grabbing the corresponding sleeve for this side, ensuring the back arm curve of the sleeve matches with the back arm curve of the top or the bodice. And then I'm joining side seam to side seam, front arm curve to front arm curve, and so on and so forth. So once I've joined the sleeve onto the main top, I know I can use the lining to sandwich the sleeve into that seam there. I just have to mention that that top edge of the sleeve, just leave roughly 1 centimeter so you have enough seam allowance at that point. So now I'm just grabbing my lining piece and I'm going to be matching side seam to side seam, front to front and backs to back, and I'm going to do this for the left and for the right hand side, as well as the neckline along the front and the back. So once I have everything pinned and sandwiched in place, I know once I stitch with one continuous stitch from one end across to the other end, I'm going to be sewing in my sleeve, finishing up my neckline and having a nice beautiful finish along that point. So when you get to the arm curve, just remember to turn, leaving your needle inside of your garment and lifting your foot, and then just stitch until you get to the other end. So after doing this, I went ahead to turn my piece inside out. I actually tried it on at this point to see if I was happy with the finish. Gave it a nice press along that neckline to relax all of the seams, and this is what it's looking like. At this point, you can actually consider making a top using just the top patterns of this dress. Now moving on to the skirt. The skirt, I actually joined several panels to create a long piece. So if you don't have enough material for one long continuous piece, you can do that as well. To create the gathers, I'm just sewing with the loosest or longest stitch on my machine along one end of the skirt piece like so, and then pulling the thread. I am going to create gathers that look like this. So once you have that piece gathered like so, you can attach it to the waistline of your top to create the dress. So once you have that waistline all joined for your top and your bottom, so I'm going to go back in and repeat the same step for my skirt lining. I went ahead to sew with the longest stitch, pulled the thread, and made nice gathered along the waistline, and then I'm just going in here to pin the waistline of the skirt to the waistline of the top, and I know I need to stitch that place up to create the full dress. So I'm just going in to sew in the skirt to the top along the waistline, removing pins where necessary and rearranging gathers so you have evenly spread fullness along the waist of the dress. So this is what the dress looks like. I went ahead to also stitch the top to the skirt of the lining, so the lining conceals the rawness on the inside of the garment. So once you are done doing that, it's time to fix the zip onto the center back of the dress, and I'm going to first stitch up that bottom seam of the center back. I stitched up, I'll say about 10 to 15 inches depending on the length of your zip, and then I'm going to be pinning the zip into the open center back seam. I always like to pin zips in first before stitching because zips can move and that would lead to reduction of measurement across your garment. So once you have your zip pinned into the center back, I'm going to be sewing the zip using my narrow zip footer. I have a tutorial showing how to fix zips, so make sure to check that out if you haven't already. And then go ahead to stitch up the other side of the zip tape to the other side of my center back opening. So this is what my zip and my center back situation is looking like. Now I'm going to grab the lining and use it to conceal the raw edge and that zip tape on this side like so. So for this particular side, I'm going to turn the lining in this direction, add some pins, and I'm going to be sewing the lining from the neckline down that center back to the bottom where the zip ends, and that would help me hide that center back seam. So I'm going to take this in my machine and I'm going to be sewing on a 1 centimeter seam allowance roughly. When I arrive at the edge of the neckline, turn my footer towards the direction of that center back seam and then join the lining and the zip tape and that center back edge all together until I get to the point where my zip ends. So I'll repeat the same step for the other side using the edge of the lining to hide that raw edge where your zip sits. Turn this inside out, cut any loose threads, and this is what it's looking like. Next up, I'm going to be sewing close the bottom seam that we left open for the lining, and that's going to help to hide that side on the bottom of the dress at the back. So I'm just sewing it up close up until the point where I can't sew anymore, and then going on to fold and sew my hemline. I just folded and sewed it twice. I did this for the main dress as well as for the lining. Gave my dress a nice press to finish it off, and this is what the finished dress looks like. I'm actually happy that it's a very comfy fit. It's not too snug, so it's something I know once it starts to get warmer I can actually wear on warm days when I want a comfortable dress. You can wear the sleeves two ways, across the shoulder and off the shoulder, which is why I love this sleeve design, and I'm so happy with the outcome. What do you guys think? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you be recreating this dress as well, make sure to tag me on social media at Kim Dave Designs. And until my next video, have a good morning, afternoon and evening wherever you are. Bye.
girl that can ride for me. Wanna lock down and shine with me. Don't you know, you don't have to try with me. Gonna let go, yeah. I'm gonna let go, gonna give you control, yeah. Cuando bailas